Happy Honda Day. Well, something like that. This is a Honda Magna, and I've had this almost all year, but I'm just now getting around to making a video of it because I need to get it out and I need to winterize it because this thing has 4 carburetors and I'm not going to risk them getting gummed up. So this is actually a pretty special motorcycle because this belonged to my late uncle. He passed away about a year ago and this ended up in my hands. At the time, I think it'd be sitting for upwards of 3 years after getting laid over in a minor accident. So by the time I got it, it needed an everything, and I definitely did not have the time or the, well, time to tear this apart and go through everything. Some of you viewing from Wichita might actually be familiar with some of my uncle's work. He was a bit of a local artist. If you're familiar with the East Warren, there are a bunch of plexiglass lighting fixtures on the inside, or at least there were. I'm not sure if they're still there anymore. He made all of those. And if until about 4 years ago in the atrium of the Garvey Center, there was a giant fish sculpture string thing. I'm not entirely sure how to describe it, but that was something that he made as well. So if you're an old timer here in Wichita, you might be familiar with one of those two things. And yeah, that's something he did. And then he had to move to Oklahoma because Kansas is absolute trash when it comes to disability. If you have a disability in Kansas, you're pretty much just told to F off and go die in a hole somewhere. And our Democratic governor is absolutely worthless and not doing anything to remedy that because she's too busy reaching across the aisle. It's probably the most political you'll see me get on this channel, but it's personal. And it's not the first family member that's been in that situation either. So I loaded this onto a trailer that I borrowed, towed it behind my girlfriend's crossover, and brought it back from Tulsa and took it straight to the shop and gave them a blank checkbook to fix everything on it. And so it got brake pads, brake fluid, oil, coolant flush, plugs, wires, tires, carburetors completely cleaned and rebuilt, tank cleaned, absolutely everything. Probably a lot more that I'm forgetting. I think it ended up coming to around $2,000 or thereabouts, including parts, new battery, some other stuff. So I've literally never turned a wrench on this bike to do maintenance. The only things I've done to it were replace the broken mirrors with some new ones, added this windshield, added the sissy bar, the rack, and the saddlebags, kind of turned it into more of a cruiser. I like to use this thing to get around town, and I want to put things in the saddlebags in case I buy something while I'm out. The really cool thing about this is that it is a V45 Magna, and some of you know what that means. These have been one of my favorite bikes for a very long time. When my uncle got this, I was extremely excited, but due to my financial situation, I was never able to get down to Tulsa and ride with him. But he loved this bike, I love this bike, I love that I'm able to keep it going. This is a 750cc V4 that is taken out of the VFR 750F and put into a cruiser, which is one of my favorite things when sport bike engines find their way into cruisers. And this represents one of the pinnacles of what is now effectively a dead breed of really competent mid-size cruisers. These just don't exist anymore. All the mid-sizers nowadays, I guess the Rebel 500 is pretty good. I think it's kind of ugly. It kind of throws back to a really bad period of cruiser import motorcycles between 1980 and 1996, where they were all kind of looked like a Sportster, but squished. They were all really tall and had really high tanks that sat way above where the seat was, and they were really short and stubby. This looks excellent. The Shadow 750 that came after it also looks good, but it makes like 40 horsepower because Honda's just completely lost the plot with V-twin cruisers. Like the Shadow in 83 made like 70 horsepower and revved to 11,000 RPM. The new one makes 40 horsepower and revs to like 4. It's terrible. It is slower than a Honda Odyssey from 2001. This, however, is not slower than a Honda Odyssey from 2001. This is a muscle cruiser along the lines of the VMAX and others that I can't think of. What was Suzuki's? I thought there was a Fast Boulevard or something that was a mid-sizer. At any rate, this is not as fast as a VMAX, but this is known for being the better handling one, which is hilarious because the amount of brake dive this bike has is simply unholy. What it does have, though, is pretty timeless classic cruiser styling, lots of chrome, good proportions, not completely forward front controls, a pretty decent cockpit, all things considered, and more than enough power to keep up with pretty much anything you'd ever want it to. And it sounds cool, because it's a V4. It sounds like, well, a V4. You've got a 4-cylinder, and it revs to 10,000 RPM, which is lower than I'd expect, but still pretty high for a cruiser. Right now, this bike is sitting at almost 31,000 miles, and when I got it back from the shop that I had to do all the work, they said that it rode like it was brand new. They could not tell that it had any amount of miles on it whatsoever. It's just the Honda, it just does the thing. It runs, and it runs good. Honestly, my biggest complaint with this bike is the amount of times I run it out of gas, because on top of having an incredibly small fuel tank, this looks large, but there are 4 carburetors under here somewhere. And an air box. So the actual tank is only a few inches on the sides and the saddle portion above it. It's actually quite small and only good for about 100 miles of range, and there's no low fuel light. And because there's 4 carbs, when you run out of fuel on the highway and switch it over to reserve, it takes a very long time before the engine will keep running. So you usually have to pull off to the side, wait for the carb bowls to fill back up, and then you can continue on your way, which is very sketchy. So I have to keep a very close eye on my tripometer to know when I'm getting low on gas and I need to fill up probably at every 80 or 90,000 miles. So it's a cruiser that's actually really bad at cruising. Combine this with my bad back and sciatica, I don't do well with feet forward riding positions. Sitting with my arms like this and then putting a foot forward just stretches the crap out of my sciatic nerve, so I actually can't ride this for very much. So this ends up being my around town bike, and then my leader bike Aprilia Tuono over there is the one that I use when I want to ride for more than an hour or so. Which is very backwards, but that thing is just a billion times more comfortable for me. One of the things that's really, really strange on this bike is the turn signals. They're the kind of usual push it over and then push it in to reset it, except that the linkage or the button is on the end of this big zigzaggy piece of metal. And when you're pushing on it, you're kind of twisting it down. And so it never slides quite right. This one broke. I took it apart and I actually bought another one with the intention of fixing it, but I ended up just tack welding it back together and it's been fine. But no matter how I lubricated or adjusted it, this isn't very smooth, and you can't really consistently, it's really weirdly tricky to actually cancel your turn signals on this bike. Also, the brake's terrible. That was the other thing with this. This is like the only bike of its era to have just a single front disc and a rear drum. The brakes are atrocious, but the turn signal is really, really, really annoying. And right after I got my Tuono, I actually got an email from someone who has something that is a fix for that. Now, it's not auto-canceling turn signals or anything like that, but it will remind me if I am going down the street with my left turn signal blinking the whole time. And it's this, the Indimate. This is a small European company. It's actually the inventor who reached out to me, and I love this sort of thing where a guy had an idea, came up with a product, small company, got it into production, and actually this packaging is quite nice. So he sent me this, and I intended on installing it in the Aprilia, but I actually think it'd be far more useful here. Basically what this is it goes in line with your turn signal flasher relay, and it connects to your phone and to your helmet's Bluetooth system, and then it's got an app. And what the app will do is either vibrate your phone or play an actual turn signal clicking noise in your helmet while your turn signal's on, so you have an audible or a felt reminder that, hey, your turn signal is on. I actually didn't know about the vibration thing until I went to their website yesterday, so I think that would let you use this without having the helmet thing. You just have your phone vibrating in your pocket. It's just a little module that gets plus or minus 12 volts and then connects to your flasher relay, and there you go. So we're gonna put this in on this bike, and I'm going to go fill the tank with some zero ethanol and some Sta-Bil, and then we're gonna put this thing back in the shop for the day after a short ride, just to kind of feel it out. And I don't know, I don't ride very much anymore. I need to ride this whenever I can, really. Quick unboxing of the Indimate. I'm still not sure. Magnet clasp on the box, that's nice. Honestly, the packaging, the highest praise I can get it is that it feels very Apple, which is certainly pretty high praise. We've got what appears to be the unit itself. I always wondered, are these buttons? No, they're not. Okay, they're just the logo. I thought these were buttons or lights or something, and it looks like we've got 4 bullet connectors that are crimped on there. Looks to be decent crimps. You can see the copper poking out there. These were all crimped fairly well. red, black, blue, green. So I'm guessing that this is left and right turn signal grounds, and then power for the unit itself. And then on the other side here, it's blinking brilliant. Can you tell this was made in the UK? Honestly, that's pretty clever. So yeah, it looks like it's also got some extension wires, actual battery harness connector. That's kind of nice. And yeah, pretty simple instructions. Hopefully I'm actually getting all this on the screen. Looks like it uses vampire taps. Not always my favorite way to do things, but for these purposes, you know, it's not going to leave you stranded if that connection messes up. So vampire taps are fine in all reality. Pretty straightforward instructions. I mean, it doesn't get much simpler. You give it power, and then you hook it up to your indicators, and then you install the app. And it uses Bluetooth LE, which is the correct way to do things, to connect to your cellular device. So here we've got all of our wiring harnesses. These appear to be the blinker harnesses. And this is our fused battery connection. Oh, it looks like we get some double-sided 3M foam tape as well for securing the device itself so it's not rattling around. So now I have to figure out where on earth the battery is in this bike, because I actually have no clue since I've never worked on it before. I guess the other question is, can I get the seat off with the sissy bar in place? It is also like 38 degrees out here. Oh, that's not Loctite, that's corrosion. Delightful. Back at it again. Okay. Ooh, a toolkit. Yep, it's tools. The installation instructions just kind of say to follow the wires going from the turn signals themselves. So in my case, they're not very visible. That's definitely them. All right, so this should be our right turn signal. I believe it is. Yep, just a little spiky dude there, and whatever you call this gray thing, which holds the wire, and then this pierces it, and then you get a connection. It's not waterproof. Yeah, like I said, I don't really love these sorts of connections, but if your turn signals stop working, it is a safety issue, but it will not leave you stranded, so it's not quite the end of the world. I don't know. I'm sure we could argue all day about that. We are getting voltage. I hate digital voltmeters. I wish I had an analog one. They're so crap. Okay, and then the other side, we're going to do this orange guy here. I would have liked to have seen silicone sheathed wiring for this, but this stuff's okay. Plug her in. Looks like we just black to black, red to red, and then the other two colors don't matter. I'm just going to tuck it down in there for now. Looks like I've got a few permissions to accept in order for it to connect automatically when we get near the bike, which is what I want because I enjoy convenience. And wow, it connected already. So now if I turn on my turn signal, look at that. Tells me exactly what it's doing. And I get some fun stats like my turn bias if I turn left more than right. So can I enable, so we've got volume settings, boosting volume, vibrate while indicating. I'm very curious about that. Vibrations occur via push notifications. Interesting. Okay, so now if I turn my audio on or up, and there we go. I can't cancel my stupid turn signals because this button sucks so much, but it appears to be working, and that's the sound that I'll hear in my helmet when my turn signals are left on for 3 miles because that button is terrible. Okay, now that we have turn signal indicators, we can see if this thing will start, and we can go put some 0th in it and winterize it, hopefully. This thing has the loudest starter of any bike I've ever owned for some reason, and the quietest exhaust. Oh yeah, these have a cable clutch. I don't know, for as much technology as Honda likes to pack in their bikes, it's kind of weird how out of date some aspects of the Magna are. How's our turn signal thing sound? Nope. Yep, it's clicking. Only in one ear though. Oh. It clicks in the ear of the turn signal that you have on. Clever. Man, you can get a lot of lead angle out of these Magnas. They're honestly, this could very easily be the only bike that you have, and it wouldn't be too big of a compromise if you can stay in the seating position, which is a pretty uniquely me problem. Haven't ridden this in a while. Let's see how she rips. Was that clutch slip? It is. Oh no. What's funny is how little torque these have. You know, it is a sport bike engine, and it's some pretty small little pistons going up and down there, so it takes a bit to get it to come away from a stoplight. Gosh, my cold hands do not love these stiff cable clutches. Unfortunately, there's not going to be much in the way of engine noise for you guys to hear. This bike is so quiet, and I'm sure there's plenty of wind noise, that there's just, you know, really nothing. It just sounds like a stock sport bike. It's just kind of a nice, calm, and away we go. Just got some Shinko Cruiser tires on here. I wanted white walls, but unfortunately the shop forgot, so black walls it is. And you can just dig into corners on these bikes. It is fantastic. VMAXs do not lean like this, nor do most cruisers. I'm not even scraping peg yet, and that's as much as I'd want to lean. I mean, you could get out of the seat a little bit to get a little more, you know, get your center of gravity where you want it to be. You could just play. It's so good. And then if you keep the revs up, I'm still not riding this right. I'm barely going above 6 on here. I should be playing up in the 7 to 9 range with this engine. I do wish I had a temp gauge, but at least I get a tachometer. I mean, a lot of these cruiser style bikes just like, you don't need to know how fast the engine is spinning. Why would you? It spins to 3. Might as well be a diesel. Nice 1200 RPM idle. It's got a remote idle speed adjustment screw, which is very nice. Pretty well thought out motorcycle, all things considered. I mean, 4 carburetors is quite an annoyance. I'm not much for carbs, but unfortunately, when motorcycles got fuel injected, they also got boring, and for the most part, ugly. Nothing looks as good as 80s or 90s sport bikes. Kind of why it gets my goat a little bit when people are asking about a first bike and people recommend, you know, oh, GS 550 from the 80s or whatever. No, nobody who's just getting into riding, nobody who isn't extremely mechanically adept and not prone to frustration should ever own an old multi-carburetor bike like that. They just are such a nice... I mean, ethanol fuel is pretty impossible to avoid these days. It's not completely impossible, but it's getting hard. And you just have to stay on top of it, and you cannot let them sit at all. And then you have issues like the brakes aren't going to be very good because it's an old bike. The suspension's not going to be very good because it's an old bike. The frame's not going to be very stiff. The geometry is probably not going to be amazing. I just hate when I see people saying, oh, get a 80s bike. No, you get a Z400, a Ninja 400, or Rebel 500. or, you know, CBR 500 or whatever, depending on what kind of bike you want. That's what you get as your first bike, used. And then you're good. It just works. And all of those are good enough bikes while being approachable that you never need to own another bike. That can be it. That can be your bike. Like I said, I've got my Aprilia RSV Tuono. I can get off that, get on a Ninja 400, and have a blast, and then wonder why the heck I'm paying the insurance on a liter bike when I can have just as much fun on 400 cc's. Oh no. My turn signal switch just broke. It's a trolley! I remember when that thing went up for auction, I really wanted it. It's got a Cummins in it. Wanted to see what would happen if you threw all the Cummins Go Fast parts at it. She pulls good, but she really needs a 6th gear. Clutch isn't slipping though. That might have just been cold fluid. We're getting pretty close to bingo fuel here, so better go get some of that tasty E0 and get this thing put away. As the sun starts to set at like 3 p.m. I hate winter. I'm so over it. When can it be nice out again? There are 4 quick trips right by my house, and only this one has 0F. Well, of course it is my luck that while demonstrating a turn signal flasher accessory, my turn signal switch would break. It has completely left the chat. So I'll have to do a post-mortem on that and probably swap in the one that I bought off of eBay. But if you want to get your own Indimate, I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Indimate because it's an indicator mate. I think that's correct. But if you want to get your own Indimate, check out the links below. This isn't a sponsored video or anything. They just sent it to me and I thought it was a neat product.